Hello, this is Focusing on Expense Loss, presented to you by Jim Lopolito, president of Lopolito Hospitality Consultants. So country clubs as a whole have been having more difficulty as the years go on. And one of the areas that is neglected, per se, is the food and beverage department, because in food and beverage in country clubs, it's assumed that you don't make money, and in some clubs you don't. It's just a statistic that they feel it's important that no matter what amount of money is spent in the food and beverage department, it needs to survive and get supplemented by other departments, and that's how some of it works. You know, there are other country clubs that have trouble with maintaining this supplement, and they need to make money in the food and beverage department. And I'd like to talk a little bit about how you can do that. So if you're a country club, this is a good opportunity for you to understand and review your back of house to see what's going on. So let's just start with, if I were going to come into your club and review things, these are things you should write down that I would review. I have a 14-point project that you can do. This will help you understand what's going on in your club. So let's start with number one is reviewing the receiving department. A lot of money comes into your receiving department. This is where many clubs, and not just clubs, restaurants, all hospitality business, but we're talking about clubs here. This is where clubs lose a lot of money, and they don't realize, they order a case of this, a case of this, a case of this, whatever. It adds up, and it comes in the back door, and it is signed away and put into the refrigeration or put into storage. And it's not generally checked, or it's not sufficiently checked. So what do I mean by that? I'm talking about reviewing the procedures to verify the product that you ordered versus the product that's received. So you get something that comes in the back door, a delivery, and in my view, every single case needs to be opened up. So you might receive a 63-count case of limes or 200-count lemons, which are both very popular case counts to order. And growing up, I would open up these cases, and drivers would go crazy because I would pull everything apart. And I would open up the 24-count or 36-count lettuce, the iceberg lettuce, and I would make sure that the counts are correct. And I would weigh the string beans to make sure the case was 25 pounds like it's supposed to be. And I would just go crazy pulling all of these things apart. I would weigh the meats. I would weigh the fish. I worked at Tavern on the Green years back, and Tavern on the Green, we would get, 500 pounds of salmon in a delivery, and we would have to weigh all 500 pounds, and it would be under 5 pounds. It would be under 10 pounds. And we would take that off the invoice. We would get lobsters. I would count every single lobster. We would order 300 or 400 lobsters, and I would count and weigh every single lobster. And it was important there because we not only did we want the weight, we also wanted to count, because, if we ordered 300 lobsters and we ended up with 280, but the weight was there, we need 300 because that's the way we calculated out the price. So if anything varied, we had to change that price or adjust what we were doing. So here's the importance of this. If you do not get in the back door what you expected, you could lose a lot of money. If you don't know anything about what came in that back door and you don't document it on the invoice, you're in trouble. All right, so that's number one. Number two is the kitchen procedures, reviewing of operations and checking preparations, portioning, the knowledge of the back of house, the skill, and the waste. And what do I mean to all those things? Preparations, and waste go hand in hand. So you're preparing something, some stuff goes in the garbage. Well, what's going in the garbage? Are you counting for that? And let's go back to string beans. Take string beans, you get 25 pounds of string beans, and you break off the tips. What do you have left? You have 24 pounds of string beans. So, when you got that case in, let's call 25 pounds of string beans $25, and that's $1 per pound. Well, when you portion it out after you take off the end, it's no longer $1 a pound. That has to be accounted for. Now it just went up to $1.10 or 5 cents a pound. So preparation, portioning, are the portions always the same size? Are you always putting out a 7-ounce chicken breast? Are you always putting out an 8-ounce piece of fish? Portion is very important. If you're buying the product and cutting it yourself, butchering, there's waste. All right, so here we go into yield management. So this is exactly what I'm talking about with portioning and preparations, is yield management. You get in a piece of steak and you don't weigh it, and it goes through the process of being portioned, and what you purchased, what came in the door, the weight was wrong, and then you portion it and you get the number of portions wrong because you don't have the weight that you thought came in the door. And here again, we're losing money. So portioning for yield management and weighing things for yield management, everything, proteins purchased, they must be weighed at the receiving department. They must be documented, any variances that are observed. You get 20 pounds of strip loin in, throw in the refrigerator. It can lose a quarter pound in a couple of days just by water evaporating from the product. And then you have to trim it a little bit. So you lose a pound, maybe even 2 pounds when you're trimming some meats. And then let's say it's a roast that you're cooking for prime rib and you cook it. Now I can tell you 20 pounds has now become 15 pounds. So if you priced it based on 20 pounds coming in the door, you lost 5 pounds in the process of dehydration, trimming, and cooking process. That 20 pounds is 15 pounds, and you better divide that 15 pounds into the cost of what it came in the door, and that's your price per pound. It just went up from $9.50 to $12.50, $13.50. Okay, so next, four is storage temperatures, procedures on temperature log review, product spoilage management. So, your refrigeration has to be the right temperature. By health department regulations, you must be checking temperatures on a log at that location. Every refrigerator has to have a log every day. You have to check temperature. You have to sign it, verify the storage temperatures on a daily basis. Something as simple as you get broccoli in the door, you should wash it. Any vegetable, you should wash them, get them wet before you put them in the storage. Take them out of the boxes, put them in, drench them in water, throw them into a container that is sealable. And then, when I do this, I put paper towels, wet paper towels over the product, and it holds it longer. So there are certain vegetables that will hold longer if you keep them moist, doing some process in that regard, and change the towels every day. So storage, spoilage management, that's very important. It's another thing I looked at. Number 5, criteria that we use for selecting vendors, placing orders, and the efficiency of the ordering department. So, you need to make sure that what you're purchasing, quality and the quantity, the costs and everything, you have to evaluate it from time to time. Vendors change prices, vendors change the quality, vendors change procedures. And, being committed to the same vendor for a long period of time, that's great if that vendor's providing you with what you need. Nowadays, that's kind of gone by the wayside. You want to be dedicated to a vendor, but you cannot be if it's an issue with your prices. So you need to compare vendors, compare quality, compare, what you're getting in the door, and, understand that vendors can no longer charge you for tear weight. Tear weight is the container. So if the case that something comes in weighs, quarter pound, half a pound, they cannot charge you for that. That's separate. So that's something you need to know. A lot of people don't know that, but that's a law that came down a while back that you cannot charge for tear weight. All right, number 6, review food and beverage general ledger expense accounts. It's another thing that I do to make sure that, something comes in and is charged. I don't care if it's golf balls, if it's tennis rackets, if it's tennis balls, the water to the pool, the food to the clubhouse, whatever it is, those items must be charged to an expense account that relates to the department that they're going to. And if I told you how many times I've looked at these things and golf balls charged to food and beverage charged to the golf course, it happens. If you're not careful about what you're doing, if you're not coding your invoices properly, you can have an invoice that can have 3 departments of items that come in the door, and if you're not accounting for those properly, they're going into the wrong department. And so whether it's your food costs or your tennis costs or your golf course costs, your general ledger codes are very important. So accounting procedures, are very important. Number 7, menu and recipe cost percentage calculations, pricing analysis. If you do not calculate out the cost of a recipe properly. And you should do this. You should have every one of your items that are on your menu recipeed and costed out. And this way you can calculate out properly the menu price that it should be. And in a club, I know that, food costs can be much higher. But it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, but you need to know what it is. Something's costing you $4 to manufacture between all the vegetables and the starch and the proteins that are on the plate. It's $4. So you can understand what you need to do to bring that up and how much money you're making on it. And there's 2 ways you can do that. You can do a percentage. So if you want to run a 40% food cost in your club, great. $4 item, it becomes $10. So you divide it by 40%. You can also do what's called a contribution margin. And using that method, there's a $6 difference between the $4 and the $10. That's a $6 contribution margin. So you could just say, look, I want to price this out. It comes to $4 and I want to add $8 to it. I want to make $8 on it. So now it's $12 on the menu. So if you did it that way, so $4 divided by $12, So that's a 33% food cost. So you can do it that way also. You need to know what your recipe costs are. Next is number 8 is labor and service procedures as they relate to expenses. So labor in a country club, sometimes it's partially ignored because you just have to have people around when there's nobody in the club. It's just a matter of expense. There's always someone cleaning, there's always someone vacuuming, there's always someone polishing the brass, even though there's no one around. But in clubs, it's a little bit different than restaurants. And, I once had a restaurant ask me to train their staff to be country club-like employees, and I told them that would be impossible and it would take me 5 years. And country club employees, they're just different. The accounting of what they do and how they do it and making sure membership is treated as if they're prized, that's the way it is. And you don't do that. You don't get that in restaurants. So, in labor in country clubs, there's a little more, I'll call it elasticity, in that there's staff around just in case something occurs and someone comes in the door and you need to be there for them. So it's a little bit different. So labor, when I come in and I look at labor in a club, I evaluate it and I figure out, based on what I'm informed upon by management, where should it be and how can we make it even better, or can we reduce it, or can we not reduce it? What methods are there that, based on what's going on, are there to do anything? So that's really an evaluation based on each club. Next would be 9, security and issuing protocols of food, of wine, of alcohol, beverage, and storage of capacity. So, everything should be locked up. It should come in the back door, hazard analysis, critical control points followed. Everything should be put into storage as quickly as possible. It's supposed to be refrigerated, get into refrigeration as quickly as possible. If it's wine, if it's beer, if it's alcohol, it should be secure behind a cage. All that needs to be counted for, and no one should have keys except for maybe the chef, maybe the manager, and maybe the person that manages the receiving department. So security of everything needs to be something you must look at because things happen. Whether it's shrinkage on something just disappearing for whatever reason, something breaks, overpouring, all those things can happen. So you need to know what's going on in your business. When something's missing, it's missing. Okay, so number 10, next is the variance review on random alcohol and food products sold versus receipts. So you can have overpouring. You can have giveaways. Things happen in clubs a little differently than restaurants. I've seen stuff come out of the kitchen and not put into the point of sale. And staff want to make an impact on membership. That's fine. And some of these things are allowed, but there are some things that aren't. But, the things that are allowed, just as long as it's accounted for. If you're giving stuff away, if the chef's sending stuff out of the kitchen, if the bartenders are giving a free drink or tried some wine or anything like that, it doesn't matter. Whatever you want to allow, that's fine, but it should be accounted for. So the variances should be measured to make sure that, you're not charging it against the food and beverage manager or the chef that, this is their food cost or the beverage cost is higher than it should be. So, it's just an accountability thing. So next would be chemicals. Number 11 is chemical usage procedures as it relate to expenses. So, out at your pool, you have a lot of chemicals. There was a place I worked with a couple of years ago, and they were paying $1.92 for hypochlorite. That's the chlorine for the pool, and it was a 650,000 gallon pool. So we were going through 800 to 1,000 gallons of hypochlorite a week. Now, at $1.92, that's a lot of money, but we got it down to $1.12. So you need to price this stuff. You need to go out there and see what you can do about reducing your prices. So chemical usage, whether it's out at the pool, whether it's out in the golf course, we looked at that. We looked at everything. You need to address these issues because chemicals, fertilizers, hypochlorite, whatever it is that you're using, chemicals in the clubhouse, not as much. You do need to monitor it, but the level that you use in the clubhouse compared to the golf course or in the pool environment, it's much different. So, but still, look at this. You need to know if there's a way you can bring down the cost of these things. Number 12, the review inventory management processes of all alcohol, wines, food calculations, first in, first out. There's a whole bunch of stuff with revenue that you can look at in inventory management. And essentially, I've been able to reduce cost of goods that you purchase by 5 to 15%. cost. So if you're purchasing $100,000 of cost of goods a year, you can reduce it by $5,000 to $15,000. Let's go up to $200,000. It's doubled. You're talking $10,000 to $30,000, and so on and so on. So if you're doing $1 million in food and beverage purchases, you can reduce that by $50,000 to $150,000 a year with proper and effective inventory management processes. This is a guarantee. You can do this. If you have somebody look at it properly, you can do this. If you're not doing it now, you should be. Number 13 is an additional reviewed items based on time available when you do these reviews, whatever you have going on in your club that isn't included in the categories, the 12 categories I just discussed, all the things that could be going on in a club. Now, that could be golf course operations, that could be pool operations, that could be tennis operations, that could be event management. So you have events, and that could be a different category than the cost of goods on your a la carte. Your event management costs could be something different that you evaluate because the level of quality might change in how you treat those instances, so that the cost could either go up or the cost could go down because you're doing something different. So those are other things you'll look at. Now, one thing that I don't normally see in a club environment for an expense loss project that I do is bar operations, and that's usually an add-on depending upon what they want to do, because this is not generally an item that clubs find useful, as most clubs do not abandon their normal pouring patterns even when pouring overages or inconsistencies are observed. And why is that? That's because membership wants a strong drink, and it doesn't matter what you do, they want a strong drink. So they come to the bar and you put a rock glass down, they want that rock glass almost full. So even if it's costing you money to put it in that drink, there are clubs out there that they just do it. So in those situations, bar operations, pouring costs, and recipes handling is not for your club. But if there is a need to reduce the cost of your bar operations, then there are so many things that can be done. You can train your bartenders much better. You can create recipe books for all your drinks that everyone must follow. There are many things that you could do to reduce. A lot of times someone will come up to the bar and say, something as basic, let me have a vodka tonic, and someone pulls out the Absolute. Well, they should not have pulled out the Absolute. They should have pulled out the Call brand, whatever you have. There's Call, there's premiums. So make sure that you're pulling the bottle that is being requested, not the one that's not being requested that costs more. So those are my 14 items when I do a club expense loss review. These are all things that you can do in your club if you need to evaluate what's going on and how to manage this is food and beverage only that we're talking about right now. I did go into other things with the golf and stuff, but this was really a food and beverage operation, except for the chemicals that I just discussed, that you can do in your club and save tons of money if you need to. So anything comes up, look up Lopolito Hospitality Consultants. This podcast was on food and beverage operations. Reach out. We're here if you have any questions. I'm happy to talk to anyone on the phone. 845-238-8131 is the phone number directly to my cell phone number. Jim here, Jim Lopolito, president of Lopolito Hospitality Consultants, and I'm here to assist you any way I can. Thank you very much for listening to my podcast.